Let's get it. This is Life's Essential Ingredients with Jeff and a Mike, where we hope to inform, inspire, and transform lives, one essential ingredient at a time. Welcome to the show. Just got to give another quick shout out to Wayne. Every time I hear an intro, I just get hyped. In this episode, you've heard me say this a million times. I get so excited for every show because I get to meet an amazing guest, which we have one today. And then I get to hang out with my Pasha, who's representing the C4 with the shirt, looking good. Just want to say good morning still to my Pasha and good afternoon to our guest, Eloisa Lewis. And I'll just let you two say hello to each other.
Good morning, Eloisa. How you doing today? And thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you both for having me. I am delighted to speak with you today.
Yes, and I love Eloisa is coming from Montreal, and I hear some sirens, and we had, I love this because it just happens. Dogs barking, kids running around, doorbells going off. It just happens. And I love the format of this. And Eloisa, we had an amazing guest, Aditi Sarana from Mumbai. And there was just some incredible noises that we heard in that episode. And I just love how organic things just happen in life. And in this case, on Life's Essential Ingredients. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I don't know if we have many people tuning in from Canada. So this is going to be great because we're in 17 countries now somehow, like 150 cities. And we just can't thank you enough for tuning in. Again, Life's Essential Ingredients is an arm of C4 Leaders, which is a nonprofit in the Bay Area who's using pizza to bring people together and help us stay focused on what's truly essential. And our guest has such a different spin on truly essential from an environmental point of view that I think is going to be such a cool conversation, especially for Mike and I, because that hasn't been our background, and I would say for myself, limited knowledge on the impact of the climate change. And obviously I believe in it, but I think Eloisa is going to have such great insight from the actions that she's taken in her background. It's going to be an amazing show. So I better be quiet, quit talking. Let me introduce the guest. And again, it's Eloisa Lewis. You can find her at her website, www.newclimateculture.com. Again, www.newclimateculture.com. About our guest, Eloisa is an American permacultural consultant, community building artist. I just love that right there in itself. Activist and healer. I got to say that again. Permaculture consultant. And that's probably like a 6-hour conversation just in itself. Community building artist. I love that. Activist and healer. With her work as a project manager and educator, she helps guide communities of individuals into holistically regenerative paradigms and specializes in communal practices of decolonization. Pasha, we going deep today. We're going to get down to the roots of who we are. And Eloisa studied at University of St. Andrews, Northern Arizona University, and most recently at UPI, which is Urban Permaculture Institute of San Francisco. Eloisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I think that has to be the all-time greatest introduction I've ever gotten. Just your enthusiasm and presentation is really, it's an honor to be here doing the things that I love to do. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. And yeah, it's an honor for us to have you on the show. And I was telling Eloisa off there, and if you're new to our show, I've been a nurse for 29 years and been surrounded by death, working in a level 1 trauma center, taking care of people shot, stabbed, really bad car accidents. And we only got one day. And it's always so important to make the most out of each and every day. And so, yeah, when this show comes on, I mean, I'm hyped, looking forward to this. I go on a walk each morning to get my mind right and kind of get grounded, and not to sound too corny, but I always try and send some love to our guest that morning, and trying to connect, even though I haven't met you at that time, but just kind of feeling your presence. And I get goosebumps just even thinking about that. But that's the truth. And so I really look forward to doing these shows. And Eloisa, we start every episode with a thought of the day. And so this one, a lot of times it takes me a long time to find the right thought. This one did not take that long, and I hope it speaks to you. But this is what, in researching you, this is what I saw. And so this is a testament to you. And then I'm just going to ask you for your thoughts and why you think I would pick that one for you. So it's from the amazing Cesar Chavez. We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own. What are your thoughts?
Wow, that's really, really beautiful choice. It makes me think immediately of my mom first, actually. My mom and dad were both very progressive in their own time, and are. And from a young age, my mom introduced me to Cesar Chavez and would always speak of him in high regard and as someone that should be a guiding light to us in our community. And so, yeah, I think that's perfect. That thought of the day takes me all the way back to home and my childhood and my roots in this work.
Wow.
And yeah.
Well, you're getting me hyped just sharing that. And how cool. Is your mom still alive?
Yeah. She's in Arizona.
I can't wait till you get to share this episode with her, and knowing that she tried to use Cesar Chavez and what he stood for and what he did for all people as a way to inspire you. And then here you are on a podcast with somebody that you've never met and who could pick, I don't know how many different millions of quotes are out there, but I picked that one. And that's a connection that you have with your mom and your people. And I'm sure it has been an inspiration to the work that you do. And then the last thing I love that you shared with that quote was just home. And man, just what the world needs is just to get home, and figure out what that means, and realize that God, it's just so all encompassing. And if we can try and see each other and help us all get to that space, man, what a wonderful world. And I do feel we're gonna get there, and I know you're gonna, in this episode, you're gonna help us get there. So let's get into it. So you're talking about mom. Do you want to definitely let you give her a quick shout out? But what was life like, growing up? You briefly spoke to it, and you said you grew up in Arizona, and I read that. But yeah, what was that like?
Yeah. So yeah, mom. Hi, mom. If you're listening, I'm sure you will be. She always asks for all my marketing stuff and everything. She's really supportive of my work and excited about it. So yeah, growing up, let's see, I was lucky because my parents made it very clear, no matter what else, that I could do and be whoever and whatever I wanted to be, and encouraged me to explore my passions and didn't really force me in any direction. I think that through the organic way that both my parents parented, I came to fear very little. I think that was important, especially for my mom, was that I wouldn't be afraid of anyone or anything if it stood between me and my truth and my love and my spirituality. And I grew up very privileged, super privileged, in Scottsdale, Arizona, in a beautiful community at the edge of the mountains. So I spent a lot of time playing in the desert, just completely with the wildlife. And yeah, just I remember building forts under trees and chasing lizards and having a lot of fun doing that. And I felt connected to the natural world and the natural cycles that way. Also, I think growing up in Arizona and growing up close to a nature preserve, right at the border of it, really, I was very aware that we were on native land, and Arizona has some of the most reservation land that's in the hands of the First Nations in the country. So I didn't grow up I grew up in a way where being Indigenous, being First Nations, being Native, that wasn't some abstract concept. Those people weren't removed from me and my community. These are, I went to elementary school, middle school, and high school with Navajo, Cherokee, Hopi kids, and went to reservation land to go tubing down the river, when I was young. And yeah, I just, and then my parents are very, in principle, very loving, principled, valued people who always taught me that I should treat every person as an individual, and that I shouldn't approach people with ideas of who they are because of how they look or where they come from.
Mm.
So that's a little bit of the foundations of me.
Wow. Yeah. Mom, amazing job raising your daughter and allowing her. I love how you said, grew up with very little fear and got empowered by your parents. And then I really appreciate you, how living with your brothers and sisters, the native people of Arizona, wasn't an abstract concept. And I think that's one of the challenges that happens with so many different race issues that go on in our country. It's abstract, and it doesn't have to be, but I would say if we could just sit down, break bread, and listen with empathy and truly see each other, a lot of these challenges that we would have wouldn't be challenges, and we'd find solutions to them. And so, yeah, how nice for you to have just had that perspective right out of the gate. And then how cool for us that you've taken that gift that you've been given and earned and are sharing it with the world and what you're doing as a consultant. So yeah, I'm excited for the show. And Pasha, you're gonna have to tell me, hey, be quiet. Let's get the guests talking more, because yeah, you have so much of an expertise. I do have a quick question though of how'd you get to University of St. Andrews?
Okay.
Am I smoking stuff? Is that the one in Scotland, or is it somewhere else? Because that's that's interesting to me.
Right. Okay. So I went to St. Andrews because my father is Scotch Canadian and grew up with an awareness of his culture, and my grandfather is very Scottish and Canadian as well. And so I actually went to Scotland when I was young, as well as Mexico. Both my parents wanted me to be in their home cultures and their home countries, even though I'm American. So I loved Scotland from a young age. I had a magical experience there when I was growing up. And then my dad, and I said to him, I was in college, and I said, like, where should I study abroad? Because I gotta get out in the world and see it. And I was 19, and my dad said, oh, why don't you try St. Andrews? And I looked it up, and I was like, you want me to go to this incredibly bougie, royalty exclusive university in Scotland, and it's a bunch of money and all that, and he was like, well, if you can get a scholarship or if you can help pay your tuition, then we'll help. And I got my scholarship for it. I applied, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but the finances worked, and I went for a semester abroad at St. Andrews, and it was one of my favorite experiences in my life, to be honest, which is in deep contrast to my semester I spent at Harvard. But I loved it. For what it's worth, I loved St. Andrews. I loved everyone I met there. I was not every single person, sure, but a lot of the people I met were doing good things in the world and really had ambitions that are similar to mine. And I was lucky in that way to find them in an unexpected place. I did the St. Andrews and the Harvard thing at the time because I was on track. I wanted to be a PhD in philosophy. So I was building my resume and my CV so that I could go to an Ivy League grad school. But I just changed plans along the way, and it no longer was relevant in that way.
Oh, man, that's an incredible story in itself. And there's always so many jewels, and that's just a testament to you. I imagine it wouldn't have mattered if you were, I'm close to Sacramento. If you were at Sac State, my Pasha's down in LA, you happen to go all the way across the world to Scotland, where you're always going to find perspective and see things that through the lens of which you choose to see it. And I imagine that just is, for the most part, positive. And when it's not, I'm guessing you look at it as a way of opportunity to see things from somebody else's perspective, with no judgment, and having just kind of young eyes, in a weird way, naive in a best possible way. I wonder how someone, can think that way or see things, and let me try and get into their shoes a little bit. That's so cool. And then you graduated from Northern Arizona University. And then did you teach there for a little bit?
Yeah, right the year I was graduating, that last year of school, I got to be an instructor and was hired for a semester, for one semester to teach freshmen about what it's like to be in university and how to manage time and social life and mental health and things like that. So that was kind of the beginning of my first experience as an educator and doing workshopping and being a conduit of change and being kind of like a midwife of these lessons and these wisdoms that we can share with one another.
Yeah, I think a shout out to the Lumberjacks, Northern Arizona, right? They're the Lumberjacks. I think that's in order. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I wanted to ask though, and because my parents are immigrants from Croatia, so I wanted to ask. You said I think your dad was a Scottish Canadian, your mom from Mexico. Is that right? Yeah. Does that help you see the world or people in a different light, having those different cultures kind of all within you?
I definitely think that it did influence me a lot. I feel that I connect a lot with the mixed race and mixed ethnicity community in the BIPOC community, and I think that we're carving out identities as people and what that means all the time, because we're defining this frontier of experience and awareness of our experience. And I think that my parents raised me to have an international perspective instead of a local or nationalist perspective. They raised me to see things beyond and across borders, especially because my mom came to the US illegally as a child. So I think that those things were just ever present, that borders were sort of they're imposed on us, and the way that they're regulated is malleable, and it's not out of our hands. It's something we should be thinking about, and it has a direct effect on us, meaning me, my mom, my sister, and our children. And totally influenced me, coming from immigrant parents. They came from north and came from south and met in the middle. And I feel like I represent North America in a way, as I'm just like, I'm all over.
Yeah, so cool. And I'm sure, you know, it's such a big influence on that led you to your permaculture kind of work that you do. So let's get into, you know, what that is. And I don't know if you want to go and give a little shout out to your company and congratulations on starting that. Yeah, just tell people what you do within that space and share whatever you want, whether it's the permaculture, whole systems, regenerative agriculture, rewilding, whatever you want, because all that is so valuable. And I'm not on my phone. I don't know if you're paying attention, but I'm taking notes like the whole time. So let it rip.
That's so awesome. Okay, so I guess my favorite things to talk about with permaculture, I'm gonna kind of go from like the grassroots to the more corporate and progress like that. So when it comes to my grassroots work that I do, that's with my more kind of personal friends or people that I've been in activism with for many years. They're people that I really trust, that I've seen like all this consistency in, or even new people, friends of friends, people through the podcast reach out to me too. And that's all very like grassroots because I see it as one-on-one, helping people to transform their lives so that they can get plugged into wherever they can affect change, because every single person, no matter who you are, no matter how little resources or how much resources you have, has an effect on the climate. And I don't think it should be underwritten. I'm definitely someone who, when I get asked, you know, what's the most important thing I can do right now, I think that it's going to be mutual aid, and I think it's going to be political. So I think those are the most important first steps, are looking toward the whole of everyone, looking at legal action, looking at policy change, because I don't think that real change, like for example, as a consumer, I get biodegradable, compostable, reusable goods. But what I'd like even better is for, you know, the policy to be that if you're a company, you're not allowed to sell things encased in plastic. I think that's a much quicker answer to the problem, and I'm all about solutions. So I like that a lot better. But from there, so when we're talking about that grassroots effect, there's so many ways that I like to talk about permaculture, because it's this whole ecosystem itself of ideas. And there's, you know, homesteading off the grid, and there's helping your city become zero waste, or collect rainwater, or doing a half-acre micro farm in the suburb where you live or whatever it is. And there's all that kind of action, and going off the grid and doing these personal choices. And then from there, and I love to talk to people about that because that's where I started. When I became interested in climate science, like I wanted to know what was good for me, what's healthy for me, what regenerates me, what kind of environment should I be living in and designing around myself. And that includes, you know, the people that we hang out with too, and are they supporting us in our visions and dreams and helping us grow, or are they limiting our growth? So there's that.
Let me interrupt you real quick, because you're saying so much, and I'm sorry to do that. But let's get back to, you know, the personal choices. That maybe we got a listener that's, I don't know, 13, 14, 15, or maybe they're 35 and like, man, I've been wanting to do something to help the environment, but just don't know where to start. And you know, you said, hey, I picked one that was healthy for me. You know, maybe give some insight on trying to help somebody that realizes they want to create a change, but just don't really know where to get started.
Well, yeah, like that. First of all, before I like dive into that, I just want to say there's no perfect activist or like conservationist or anything. Like there's people who live in a completely closed loop off the grid, and they source their own water and grow their own food, and that's great, and that is has its own perfection to it. But I just think that, again, no matter where you are living, who you are, what your talents are, there's a way for you to have a really positive effect. And sometimes it's less about that perfection, and more about, like, I don't worry about being responsible for every single piece of organic matter that comes through my life, because I'm a climate scientist and a permaculture designer. So people sometimes are like, oh no, like you didn't finish your whole plate. That's very wasteful. And for me, I'm like, well, it's going to go to the soil anyway. So now that I've gotten that spiel out of the way, which I do think is important, the first thing I think that people should do is really easy. If you have any extra money, and it can be as little as $15 a month or $5 a month or whatever, like it can be quite small, but you can start putting money toward lands conservation and rewilding through apps like the Ellie app or the Klima app, and 8 billion trees is another one of them. Those three services I really like because it's for people who, if you have any extra money, you can just immediately start helping to contribute to funds that are buying up land, so that the land can be preserved. If it's already wild, it can be preserved so that it's not sold to a corporation that would use the land to extract resources. And then if it's land that has already been damaged, then it's buying that land for the ability for it to regenerate, as well as there's just so many different, then there's tree planting, and there's cleaning up the ocean, and these things you can just automatically have that as a monthly subscription, which is so great because we all these days we all subscribe to video games and Spotify and whatever else, and if we can subscribe, if we can have money to subscribe to those things, I wonder maybe we can have some money to start subscribing to ecosystem regeneration, everyone. And then for free, I recommend absolutely anyone who's truly interested in ecosystem regeneration and climate science, take a permaculture design course. And second to that, if that's a little too involved, think about bees and think about community gardens, because those are going to be the easiest access ways to get your foot in the door and know that you're doing something really important for your community, is to invest in seeds for pollinators like birds, insects, and butterflies, and bees. And if you don't have space or there's no local community garden, you could think about having hosting pollinators like mason bees. They're really easy to raise in your yard. Yeah, and of course composting is an all-time favorite for me. So those are like a handful, maybe a handful or two of ideas that are very close to my heart, and I think are fundamental.
Wow, those are all great ideas. And I just want you to know that as soon as you said for free, you got my Pasho's interest. He loves that word.
Come on,
Me
Pasho.
too.
It is.
Me too.
I love everything that you're saying, but at the same time, it's overwhelming, and you have so much knowledge. And I think this is part of the problem with this. And I'm just giving you my 2 cents, is everybody gets so busy and there's so much good to do, but then you hear all your amazing ideas and it just becomes overwhelming. And I hope that's one of the things that the pandemic, in a weird way, can help us pause, breathe, and smile and say, all right, what's truly essential? And let me slow life down and do a little bit less so we can live better, and we can live better. And then you pick one thing, pick one thing that speaks to you, and then go out and get after it. And then hopefully that one thing starts speaking to you, and then you have your friends that you start sharing that with. And then now all of a sudden you're affecting change, at least with 2 people that can lead to 4. Yeah, I mean, it's just, and then you have so much knowledge, and not to sound ignorant for me, but like rewilding. I know what that is now in getting prepared for this show, but I didn't have a clue on what that was. So maybe you can give us a little bit more education on the importance of that. And maybe that speaks to one of the listeners of like, man, I want to help with that and give some money towards that cause. So yeah, give us a little bit of education on rewilding.
Rewilding, these words are all really new and everyone's staking out definitions in different camps about them. So I'll say for me what it is. Rewilding is about increasing biodiversity. And why I like the word wilding is because oftentimes the increasing of biodiversity looks like a return to a more chaotic ecosystem, which is like a wild forest or a wild meadow or something like that, where it's not being trimmed in the same way that we usually see in the Western world. It's not being over cut back for aesthetic purposes. Another thing I think of is like, I had a client whose property I was helping design recently, and I put a bunch of compost into a big pile without it being inside of any container, basically, that I didn't build any container for the compost pile. And it's one of my favorite ways to do it when I have the ability to. And when my client asked me like, well, won't the animals get into this pile of compost from my kitchen and things like that? And I said, well, we want them to. So I built a big mound and mixed it with different materials like leaves and sticks and whatever is around, mulching it. And I did that and I left it there because I don't mind that, the insects, the birds, and maybe a deer are gonna scavenge in it. Actually, I want to support them. I don't see them as pests. I see them as neighbors. Yeah. So that's kind of part of that conceptualization of rewilding is like, I'm not against nature. I'm not fighting these other animals in the ecosystem for space or for food or for water. I'm actually relearning how to coexist with them and support them in symbiosis, which is a mutual aid between species.
I wish I shouldn't even bring this up because I don't remember it all the way. It was a video I watched maybe 5 years ago, and I want to say it was in Yosemite, and they had the wolves had left the space, or maybe it's Yellowstone actually, and the wolves had left that space somehow. Something happened to them, and then they reintroduced them. I don't know if I can say rewild, that use that term, and it totally changed and brought everything back to how it should be. And logically thinking, you're thinking, well, they're going to kill this, and but that's what's supposed to happen. And we had kind of removed nature from that space and had actually harmed nature and put nature back into that space and helped nature. And that's when you use that word chaotic, that's like that's the natural chaos that's supposed to be there. And we humans keep messing up that space. And so, yeah, I love that.
And it makes me think of also dams, because California has a dam problem. I mean, the world has problems with dams, but definitely in California. And like, that's the idea of rewilding, is like kind of breaking down these past infrastructures that have messed up migration routes and mineral deposits, and like so many different species have been affected negatively by the damming of rivers. So like rewilding is looking at, okay, let's undo. As much as we're doing, we're going to be undoing as well.
I love that. And again, that's what I'm excited for this pandemic, because I really feel like it's going to take us a few more years, but we're going to come out of this better, because I think this thing that we call life, I really think people are realizing that we could do it different. And I think the time is the way people were working since everybody, had to be at home. I think we're looking at work space so different, family so different, nature so different. I think there's more of an appreciation now for nature. And so, yeah, I sure hope you can, well, I already know you're going to continue to do your thing and get the word out there. But yeah, I just feel like the time is right to let's get this thing right in so many different ways that are important to our country and to the world. Let's get into, so correct me again, but in trying to study for this episode, permaculture, it seemed to resonate within like 4, and just say, Jeff, you're smoking crack if I'm like so off, but 4 kind of key philosophies make up permaculture: whole systems thinking, regenerative agriculture, rewilding, which we've already discussed, and then community resilience. Is that correct if you think about permaculture of like, roughly, and you can just say yes or no. And then I would love to hear your thoughts on whole systems thinking. That just sounds a little bit intimidating to me, but I love it.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about permaculture. I think that there's probably infinite ways to describe what it is, honestly, because it's just a complete fractal. Like, when I look at the flower of life, I see permaculture. I see the word permaculture. So like, I think that it's just a really fractal idea about basically at the core that everything in the ecosystem is interconnected. Everything on the planet is interconnected. And we need to maintain very specific balances in the natural world in order to thrive as humans. And I mean, truly thrive, not thrive from the exploitation of others' labor. And so I think that that's what permaculture is all about, is thriving, empowering ourselves and each other, and doing it in a way that is so simple and earthy and removed from these, issues of famine, war, starvation, capitalism. Like, we kind of toss all that stuff to the side, and instead of trying to theorize about the perfect society on these huge grandiose scales, permaculture is much more about how do you build the perfect society from where your own feet are planted in the ground and spiral out from there. And that's the very grounded nature of permaculture, which is like, instead of trying to be a traditional kind of armchair philosopher, which literally, I'm the first one to speak on it since I was a philosophy major in school. Instead of being an armchair philosopher and just thinking about how things can be or should be or would be or might be or who, whatever, and instead of that, we're saying, okay, let's look at the natural world as something that's telling us really important things about the order of life and the way that life is meant to operate. And we can understand it, and it's very simple science at the end of the day. Actually, it's remarkably simple science. I think climate science is overcomplicated and elitist at core, and the way that the scientific and academic community operate. But the thing is, again, permaculture is one of those gems that came out of an academic environment that returns us to the idea that it's not about getting certificates. If you can do something, do it. If you can learn something, be a citizen scientist. I know plenty of permaculturists who are out of jail and doing some of the most important permaculture in the world, and they have no degree, and they had very rough circumstances growing up, and they're doing incredible things with algae and mushrooms and becoming foremost experts in their fields. And that's such an important aspect of permaculture, as well, as that a lot of the materials and the resources to learn permaculture are free online or in your local community. And that's essential. And much of the work I did for the first 4 years that I was studying and working, I did for free, because that's how it should be. It's not like I believe this knowledge is kind of not to be too woo-woo, but like God-given or something. It's self-evident knowledge. It's knowledge that we should all have in elementary school, how to feed ourselves, water ourselves, and shelter ourselves without any intervention from money or government. I think those are just what any child should know. And that's, again, that's what makes permaculture grassroots and earthy and accessible and different, because it's anti-elitist. Yeah, it's about everyone being equal, and we should see that and act on it and act that way.
Man, I love it. And I feel a little bit awkward saying this, but I just I authored a children's book, and it's called Pizza Day, We Rise Together. And I just keep, in all that you were just sharing right there, I just kept seeing I have an amazing illustrator. The book should be coming out like in August, but I just keep seeing the kids that she's creating and the words that we're using and empowering each other and present and be where your feet are and what I would call feed the starter, just really takes me to this permaculture that you're describing. And I know in researching you, again, you participated, I don't know if it's frequently, but at least a little bit in these rainbow gatherings. And that sounds so cool. And I'm hoping I can give a challenge to my Pasha and we can get out and participate in one of those, because it just sounds like an amazing opportunity to explore life with no judgment and with people that just want to learn and figure out how do we do this thing in the best possible way for the environment as well. And to maybe give a little bit of education on the rainbow gatherings. And again, something I wasn't even familiar with, and so excited to cross paths with you because it's pretty special what you guys are doing in those gatherings.
Yeah. Rainbow gatherings. I love them. I also wrote a book called Culture Board. And right now it was a limited edition print, but I'll do another print in the future. So I'm sold out, but Culture Board talks about rainbow a lot. And let's see. So yeah, when it comes to rainbow, we're everyone and no one, because there's no centralized organization. There's no leaders. It's an anarcho-permaculture event, meaning it's combining ideas that come from anarchist principles, which is self-governance, and permaculture, which is everything we've been talking about, ecosystem regeneration, living in respect to nature. So I like to say, my favorite line about permaculture is earth care, people care, fair share. And I think that rainbow gatherings embody this in the most radical way that I've ever seen in my experience of life. I think that rainbow is incredible. It's an example and a beacon. I think that it was founded by the same people who founded Burning Man, and Burning Man took a different philosophical approach to art and communal living and change, and Rainbow went more for decommodification, anti-capitalism, and they're much more respectful and in line with the ecosystem, and usually leave the site actually better than they found it, which is really rare for any group of humans moving through any space. Even backpackers, I used to go along the Pacific Crest Trail, and even backpackers would like throw their trash along the trail, and that's just not something that is acceptable at Rainbow. So they're just the best. They're the best conservationists and radical anarcho-permaculturists that I've come across that are accessible. I don't want to give away anyone's home address to their commune or something, but as an accessible place, yeah, it's probably the best that I've ever seen.
So is it stuff on the down low, or how again, not sound ignorant, but what if Mike and I wanted to go check out a rainbow gathering? How would we find out how to do that?
Yeah, there's Facebook groups. That's like the most common way that I would recommend. I'm someone who I got introduced because I knew somebody. So that's kind of, it can be that way. Rainbow can be a little bit more like you got to know somebody who knows somebody to go. But the thing is that if you do have the willpower to do the research and get in contact with people who are posting on the public Facebook pages, then do that. Go into Facebook and type in, 2021 Rainbow Gathering. And there's national gatherings, there's local gatherings, and there's international gatherings. So it's all depending on kind of, again, where your path leads you in your research and in your personal desire. But the national gathering is every summer, and it actually is happening right now as we speak. And it's for about a week is the main event, but people who are dedicated stay for about a month total to build the camps and the kitchens and the sites, and then to disassemble them after. And yeah, it's right now. So shout out to my Rainbow family. I know that everybody is gathering, and it's a tough time to gather because of COVID last year and this year. But Rainbow folks tend to do what they like anyway, for better, for worse. And yeah, I think that y'all would be able to go, certainly through staying in touch with me. I can pass on some names and some Facebook stuff. And then for anyone else, yeah, just look at public Facebook pages, and don't be afraid of, people talk all kinds of ways. It's just like anywhere else in the world, where sometimes people who are very vocal online are just annoying, and it's not representative of what the community is like in real life. So I would say, like, never trust anything online about Rainbow. Always go in person and see for yourself, because 99% of the information about a Rainbow Gathering online is, I shouldn't say 99%, but a lot of it is kind of negative and not really, I think it's through a lens of misunderstanding. And yeah, I think that I think Rainbow gets a bad rap because it's similar to Occupy, and the people who go, Occupy Wall Street type of people. So you have to imagine they're fighting against a system that wants them to look bad. They're working with indigenous people on the land to fight pipelines. So when the local news guy might be a conservative hat, might write that these hippies are, I don't know, bringing ticks to your town, something like that. Yeah. And that's okay. That happens. That's okay. Rainbow's more resilient than rumors, and has been around for now 50 years, I believe. So I know that it's gonna keep going, and there's people who live their whole life, going every year, every event, and it's their life. And for me, yeah, Rainbow is always going to be a part of my life. I took a few years off because I've been doing some other things, but I'll always have Rainbow and go back.
Very cool. Thank you for that education. And you talked about resilience, and I know that's part of the permaculture and community resilience. What do you mean by that, or what do you think? Define that a little bit, if you can, under this permaculture umbrella philosophy. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think resilience has to do with when you really know what's truly good, especially for the ecosystem and for each other. You want to hold on to that, because a lot of forces come to oppose it. And it's the same thing with the climate resilience as the resilience. It's really about recognizing how much we need each other, and having a strong community allows us to overcome many problems that we see on a systemic level. If we can solve these problems in our neighborhood, then that's probably the best resolution in and of itself. Is because we're making the decisions for ourselves, what's best for us in our own tribe or our own region or neighborhood. And people who don't live there don't get a say in what's going on, or how expensive the rent gets to be or something. And so community resilience, and I mean, it also makes me think of ancestral resilience and knowledge, because I think about how many hands carried down these beautiful medicinal heirloom seeds that grow the most incredible fruits and vegetables that are organic and healing and medicinal. And how many grandmothers, grandfathers stored those seeds in their personage as they went from place to place across the world. That's how so many seeds have been distributed, is because people took them from their homelands and cultivated foods across their migration routes. And so, yeah, I think about resilience, and I think about how important it is that we carry these ideas, these ways of being, these literal seeds and metaphorical seeds. We have to carry them like very precious cargo along our pilgrimage through life, and distribute them along our path, so that yeah, they're growing everywhere. That abundance is everywhere.
Yeah, I love that right there. I really love it. It's such a good visual of what you had, and I think that resonate with hopefully people listening in, and something that, again, I think we just can lose track of just honoring our ancestors and how we've arrived to where we are, and then hopefully taking some of what they've instilled in us and carry that forward and share it with future generations, and knowing that we have a responsibility to continue to water that space, make sure it's getting plenty of sunshine, and turning it over to future generations, kind of like you said with the rainbow gatherings, better than it was when we received it. Man, this has been awesome. You've really given me a great education. I know my Pasho and the listeners. What is one thing you're like, Jeff, come on, man, why haven't you asked me this? This is what I really need to be talking about. You got me here from Montreal, interrupting my day, and you haven't even asked me like the most important question.
Okay, well, I think that's something I should speak to before I leave, is the professional work that I do, and that I do more with my larger corporate clients. So I just want to talk about that, because if anyone's listening and has a friend, a father, a cousin who might be interested in my work, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am a climate and sustainability consultant, and so when I'm doing work with these large organizations or larger funds, grants, or whatever, I get to work on making systems, whole systems, carbon neutral or even regenerative in nature. So not just are they neutral, but they're actually taking more carbon out of the air and more greenhouses out of the air than they are producing. And so that is my great passion and purpose right now. And I love to do it, and I can do it with any industry, any system, because permaculture is like that, where the patterns just spiral out. Like once you know how to do the regeneration, you just need to implement and re-implement the system over and over. So yeah, so if anyone's listening, let's work together to preserve the ecosystem and regenerate it, because yep, that's what me and my friends do. And let's team up.
I love it. And again, it's Eloisa Lewis. You can go and contact her at www.newclimateculture.com. Newclimateculture.com. You already know she got crazy knowledge, crazy experience, huge heart, sees all people, and is doing some incredible work. And gosh, with everything going on, I don't know if Canada's been hit. I know in where was it? British Columbia? There was somewhere that just had a big fire up in Canada. Seattle had 110 degrees. I mean, Oregon off the chart. Where I live in Vacaville, we had serious fires last season. So yeah, I mean, we got to do stuff different, and the world is just giving us so many signs to take a step back and slow down and let's get it right. So again, Eloisa Lewis can help you with that. newclimateculture.com. This was amazing for me. I appreciate you coming on the show. I know my Pashito has got some closing remarks that he wants to share, and thank you again, Pasho.
Wow, I learned a lot, and my daughter, who goes to school at LSU, she's been slowly, I say slowly, I'm not that bright, about teaching me about how to be more friendly with the ecosystem and what to do. And wow, that you take it to a whole different level, and we appreciate it. And I think everyone, hopefully listening to this, will try to do something to preserve the ecosystem. That's all we got. So I thank you for sharing, and I wish you all the success, and hopefully we'll run into each other somewhere along the line, and you can enlighten me and teach me more. Thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. I have just had a wonderful time, and I want to say as my final word, let's shut down these pipelines. Let's stop line 3. Let's end the oil monopoly and enter a new era together. Let's do it. We can do it.
I love it. Pashito, boom, that just happened. Listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode. Again, Life's Essential Ingredients, dropping every Tuesday. This was episode 36 already, Pasho. It's crazy. We getting it done and have an amazing guest. So listeners, thank you so much. And my Pasho did give you a challenge. Take action. Just do one thing to make this environment, our world, better, to lessen our carbon footprint. Whatever that is for you, listen to this episode and then take one action. Thank you.